morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's so fun to say this introduction, and it's very much in alignment with the transit that I'm going to speak about, which is Neptune retrograde. So let's begin with why it is funny. Just a minute before I go, why is it Mars again? Really Mars? Really Mars? Yeah. So why is it funny? Because it could be midnight, it could be morning, it could be noon where I am. No, it's 5:07 p.m. And I would still, when I'm broadcasting to everyone, then I would still say good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Okay, it could be 3 a.m. where I'm at. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And that's something that is across the board. It doesn't have any boundaries. Okay, it's a constant across all worlds. Okay? And why is that so fit with talking about Neptune in general, but also talking about Neptune retrograde? What Neptune represents is the dissolution of boundaries. Okay, with that fork of Poseidon, the god of the sea. The ocean, the great vast, the great void. Some people even associate it with the cosmic womb. Modern astrologers that like to associate houses and signs would associate Neptune and Pisces with that which is the 12th house. I caution you against delving right into it. It's something that you should only be doing after you've learned to separate houses and signs, so it will not confuse you. But usually people do learn it the other way, and so did I. Neptune, it rules, with being associated modernly as the ruler of Pisces, or being associated with Pisces. Neptune in general is also related to addiction patterns, to desire for the eternal is something that I would associate Mercury and Neptune with. And just today I was thinking, I was wondering, should I save and do my, like cleaning up my teeth regularly? Now, when Saturn is in Neptune sign, and I treated it as Neptune sign in Pisces, and I was, oh, wait a second. Pisces as well as Neptune. Neptune is a healer, is about healing, and Saturn is teeth. And then I thought about the inherent structure of medicine in general that is Neptunian. Okay, we talk about both the alcohols and the sedatives, or the drugs, simply put, whether they're psychedelic drugs. And just, yesterday Neptune retrograded. So you can see the chart here. You can do a screenshot and see, the moon is in 13 degrees Sagittarius, with the ascendant in Sagittarius, which is of course good for me because it's my 10th house. Midheaven is ruled by Mercury and is sitting pretty in the 8th house. So not so pretty in the 8th house. It is combust. It's actually not Kazimi. I think Ksenia Moore that just did a video about Neptune retrograde. I said, because before I continue watching it, I want to do my own video, and then I will be relaxing and watch my colleagues. So go out to her channel. She's a great teacher of astrology, and she said, right now what is happening, the sun is closer to the earth than Mercury, and Mercury is basically combust or hidden in the light of the sun, or invisible. If you want to know more about the invisibility of the planets, I really recommend people like Gracia Tassio and also Trifon that talk about the invisibility of the planets as well. I don't know how to compute it. I don't have the right program for that. And so I just listen to Gracia to see when a planet is invisible. So Mercury is invisible, it's the ruler of the midheaven. It may mean that the communication may be a bit different than the usual. Okay. Saturn's day, when Saturn retrograde in Pisces, so it's a good time to talk about the place where Saturn is retrograde in, which is Pisces, and Mars, with Mars here in the 9th house, 24 degrees Leo. separating from the conjunction with Venus and from the square with Uranus. Okay, so we have a relatively quiet Mars to what it's been doing in the past few days, and that could be awfully wrong. Like if we check the news, I'm probably wrong. The moon itself is not triggering anything in particular related to this conversation or Neptune, but still, I want to talk about Neptune retrograde. So Neptune retrograded yesterday, depending on where you are on the planet, and as in any retrograde, okay, it means that the planet is a bit closer to the Earth, so it looks like it moves more slowly or even moving backwards. Okay, and when it looks like it's moving backwards, it doesn't move backwards. We just see it from our vantage point. But that the very observational bias related to observing a planet that is in its phase where it looks like it's going backward, and we call it retrograde, tells us for any planet that there is a sense of scientific bias going around. Okay, it looked like something is going backwards. However, we may be able to observe more closely of things that happened when that planet was direct. Okay, think about a smooth stride versus a bumpy stride. Okay, if you travel a road, and that road has these bumps that are supposed to keep you in the right speed, right? Then you are basically supposed to pay more attention. Are there children playing here? Are there, cats trying to catch your attention by doing weird stuff on the pavement? We had a cat like that. Is there a ball flying around? Okay, what is going on as you drive the bumpy road? It's usually within a neighborhood or so. And if it wasn't for these bumps, you would have say, okay, now I need to turn left, now I need to turn right, and you might have not seen, this child running into the road, or this cat sitting, exposing its belly and waiting for a belly rub. I kid you not, we had a cat that did that on a Dutch street in our neighborhood. It was quite funny. Fortunately, survived that, and that is one of the things that can happen when a planet is direct. Okay, you're just going smoothly through the road. You enjoy the flow, but there are certain things that you won't pay attention to. And when a planet is retrograde, you're driving a bumpy road. Okay, it can be frustrating. It's slower. That's why it looks like retrograde, because the planet is moving slower and is closer to the Earth. And you pay attention to all these things that you didn't pay attention to. You think about waiting in line. You wait in line for the doctor. Okay, and usually they would take you, maybe there were 2 people, 3 people, so you make a little bit of a phone call, and then you get into the doctor's office and you go out. Now you're waiting, and there are 30 people. But you can't postpone this meeting. So there are 30 people, and now you're beginning, either you're going to talk to each other, or you're going to do something, or you're going to pay attention to the little details in the room, or you're going to rethink many things, or you're going to have, premonitions. That's what any retrograde, okay, this is before we got even to Neptune. Any retrograde will do that. Things will pop up for you to pay attention to. Okay. Neptune. What are those things that pop up with Neptune? Neptune has to do with the longing for the eternal, and all the many things we do to become eternal. Only now in Mercury retrograde, I was cleaning my kitchen, thinking about medicine. Should I save money and go to the dentist to have a cleanup check? And I was like, but is it good? Because Neptune is also about deception, and is also about people who are charlatans. And I'm like, no, but Neptune is also about, Neptune or Pisces is also about healing itself, and the medicine and the drugs that we take. So this governs that. Okay, it governs that. And that that is, and then I realized that Neptune is about longing to the eternal, and medicine is about us becoming eternal. Okay, why do we do medicine? So that we will have longevity, so we can touch eternity. Okay, there's the eternity of Uranus, that's a bit different. It's beyond the scope of this episode. But then there is to touch the eternal. Okay, when you look at the horizon, it looks like, think about you're sailing in a ship. Okay, you're sailing a ship, and you look to the horizon, right? And you keep moving towards the horizon. But the horizon seems to be going even further, because the entire horizon point that you're trying to touch is illusory. And yet, have you ever not been to the sea and looked at the horizon and desired to swim a bit farther to touch that point? It doesn't matter how many degrees you study it, or how atheist you are, or how good of a logical thinker you are, or how there's the inner child there that wants to swim towards the horizon and to touch it. Okay, and we try to do it with medicine. We try to do it with shamanic healing, shamanic journeys. We try to do it with astral projection. We try to do it with drugs, okay, prescribed or not. Most addictions are to prescribed drugs. You need to take into account. We try to do this by having all kind of medical procedures. If you take the stem cell of a virgin and put it inside a human trafficker that traffics children, would he become more, glowy in the skin? Unfortunately, sometimes yes. And that's a part of how we practice the attempt to touch this eternal. So alcohol, drugs, doctors and healers and shamans and charlatans and not charlatans and spiritual people. And because it is of that, and then you ask yourself, you go a bit deeper and you ask, why do we want to touch this eternal? Why do we want to go? What's in there? We want to know what's in there. It's a mystery. You want to unveil the mystery. So everything to do with things that are mysterious and going into the mystery. And going into the mystery, you think about spies. They're mysterious. You think about those very mythical nymphs. Neptune is incredibly erotic. It's erotic in a way that is a siren. There's a siren that's guiding your ship to go elsewhere. You're supposed to deliver this materia from this country to that country, and then there is this siren. She said, well, come here. Well, that journey is lovely. Well, anyway, you're delivering drugs that are going to kill people. Let it come here. So that's Neptune in general. And then we can understand all the many patterns that we have around us. So it's both the dreamy state of something that's beyond the here and now, but is in the here and now. It's touching the eternity now. We get a bit of the experience and we strive for more. It also has to do with sciences and the science, if you think about the saying of you court nature and she reveals her secrets to you, okay, it's a scientific myth, and it's a scientific experience of something that is beyond the temporal, this eternal, that you constantly strive towards. That is a spiritual experience within the discovery of how things work. And then there's another layer and another layer and another layer, and you're keeping unveiling this thing. You enjoy the journey. And that's what happens with Neptune. It allows you to enjoy the journey. Okay, why do people consume alcohol? 90%, they either want to have a presentation, so they need to get a bit high, whether they take alcohol or they go and take some microdosing or whatever is going to help them, or to hit on the other sex, or not the other sex, okay, to hit on someone, and to basically be able to let loose and allow themselves to flow. okay, to remove the blocks and the stagnation of reality. Now, when we get more of a planet, when a planet is retrograde, if something happens, and I really liked what Ksenia Moore said about alcohol. She said, and that is new to me actually, she said, if Neptune is direct and you have 3 glasses of wine and you don't even feel it, and that just goes apart your evening, you don't get drunk, it doesn't bother you in your driving or not or anything like that, it's just a part of your leisure time, it's not an addiction. Then when Neptune is retrograde, you could have like a glass of wine and you're like, oh my God, now you lost it. Okay, so I don't know if it's true that you might need less incentive to go into dream state, or dreams may be becoming more prominent in this time. But there is also with any retrograde planet, because there are bumps in the road and you pay attention to more things, there is also a certain sort of a reality check. Okay? If you have been addicted, you might realize that you have been addicted. Or you might realize what's underlying this addiction. Okay? It might be in a way that triggers it more, and then there's some resolution to that. And the reason I named this video Neptune retrograde in sync with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, because Saturn here gives you also the ability to work through the issues that Neptune brings along. Okay. And I'm going to begin with a bit of an example of something that I experienced through Saturn actually retrograde in Aquarius. I wanted to schedule a meeting for my teeth, and of course it was problematic because Uranus and so on. So it was the square with Uranus. And I see the doctor. I say I paid my insurance. There's no problem. She calls the HMO. She said the computer does not allow me to treat this patient. Why is it so? And they said, but they paid everything. It's no problem. She said, I don't know. Maybe it's something with my computer, but you will have to reschedule. I said, okay, I reschedule. Then what happened was that I paid my insurance, my medical insurance. I paid every month because when I would give them the kind of like permission to access my bank, they would do it on the wrong day, and I'm like, I'm not gonna mess with my credit score. And that was the time where I'm fixing my credit score or tending to my credit score. So I said, I don't like it. Like it hurts my credit score. If the bank, like, it's not my problem, it hurts my credit score. So I'm gonna pay them by the month. I'm gonna reach the casa and I'm gonna pay by the month. And that, unfortunately, even though I paid my insurance, I was not allowed to receive the benefits of a person who has insurance because of the method that I paid. And that was specifically told me that is why this is so. And of course, I said I halted all of my medical insurance, and I said I really need to rethink all of that. But you kind of see how this retrograde works. I was just tending to my teeth. So, okay, let's schedule a teeth treatment. And Saturn rules teeth, but it also rules depth. Okay, so and then lo and behold, someone called me from a company that starts teeth insurance. And I said back then it was too much for me to go there because I needed to go to my bank, and there's a whole lot of bureaucracy to go there, and I wasn't sure like about the many things, and I would need to wait 3 months, and I would need to travel to another city. And then it was something I forgot to ask him. And now when Saturn is retrograding Pisces, I was thinking, oh, I should call this person and ask him if they have a holistic treatment to the teeth, because I want to see a holistic health practitioner who does my teeth. So they will not recommend me like fluoride and all that crap, but will know to do something that is actually beneficial. And this is the type of things that can happen. Okay, you just want to fix something. We see it with Mercury a lot. We see it with any retrograde. You want to fix something, and then something else happens. Okay. With the Mercury retrograde, I had a Mercury talisman. I was coming for my other Venus talisman, Venus oil, great oil by Halo Astro, and I was holding my Sphere and Sundry Mercury doorstep, it shows that the communication is a bit door, not the door key subset. Yeah. So I was going to release my beautiful Venus from the taxation, and I had to go to a bank that's 200 kilometers away because I thought there won't be too many people. And there were some people, and I was very unnerved. It's very difficult for me to wait in line, like mentally. So I went there, and I didn't have my disability card with me because it was on the phone, and the phone was no longer working. And so I said I will pay my taxes, but at the same time, I also will. I hope she will like receive me because I didn't have an appointment. Because again, I have problems to wait in line, and it's not narcissism. I have CPTSD. And although probably many people who are narcissists have CPTSD as well. So anyway, she not only believed me, but she actually got me this phone. And I thought she had a spare phone, but no, she went and bought me a phone because I could not afford it at the time. So that was really fascinating of how I got this new phone with whom I can record and edit videos. That is a skill that I currently need. And maybe there are some problems with bureaucracy that can even be solved by me having a new phone. Okay? And that was just, something that something falls through for something to fall, for the pieces to fall into place. That is happening with every retrograde. This is also true for the Neptune one. Neptune rules anything that is fluid. So for Neptune retrograde, I notice it's sometimes easier to save money. It might be easier for you to save money during the Neptune retrograde. It might be easier for you to pinpoint any patterns of addictions that you have in your life. And with Saturn retrograde, you will also receive the what to do about this. Okay. Now, Neptune retrograde can also mean that we uncover certain mysteries. And Mercury rules things that are missing because mystery, right? So missing things popping up. With Saturn retrograde, I talked about shipwrecks. But with Neptune retrograde can be missing people, missing children, scandals around the healthcare system. And again, we cannot separate the Saturn ongoing retrograde from that. So exposure relative to the healthcare system. And it's mishap. And Rune Soup actually released, I think it was Australia, prescribing psychedelics for PTSD and CPTSD patients. And it was like, oh, that's great. But that happened the day that Neptune turned retrograde, when I think about this. So you think like, oh, there is an easing of the ability to access psychedelics, and another person, just unrelated to him at all, was saying, well, I wish I would have known that, if I would have known what psychedelics actually do, then I would have chosen my anxiety over the 4 years that I had to deal with the side effects of what it did to me. And well, my comment was, knowing that psychedelics is something that is a trial and error, is something that people, Terence McKenna himself said that studied psychedelics and would eventually bring to what we now have as this psychedelic revolution, and the legislation of it. He said, if you want to start with psychedelics, you start at the library and you stay there for a very long time. Here, there are so many species, so many things you can experience, so many new ways as how to prepare it, how much dosage, how much this, how much that. And it's not an easy matter. Okay, and it has a range of experiences that people can experience differently. So this touches at the essence of what I call non-volitional, non-dual experiences. Okay, and therefore my comment to Rune Soup was as simple as, well, the reason that it is being legislated and prescribed is because a lot of people have side effects, and later they are given antipsychotics, which is beta blockers. And now those people that had PTSD and CPTSD don't have any chance to get their testimonial validated for the atrocities that they have been exposed to. And if you take into account the number of psychiatrists and psychologists and doctors that actually re-traumatize the patient on purpose. Okay, so they regress a patient to a child state and then they traumatize them. You give it with psychedelics in their hands, it's a big problem. Okay, so some people might be able to get healed. And it always goes like that. When somebody's predatory, they take a couple of people, they don't hurt these people. These are their trusted few. And now whenever somebody's going to say something about them, they're going to have this trusted few. They're going to like, this person saved my life. And it's true, they will save their life. And that's how we go about this thing. And so we see that something that we've waited for so long to be a bit easier on the regulation is done from motives that are ulterior motives. And that touches at the heart of another Neptunian phenomena that is non-volitional, non-dual experiences, what people like to call in medicine psychosis. Okay. So we're going to have a lot of discussion about these things, whether it's psychedelics, pros and cons, taking a realistic view at even, I read Cameron talking about weed, so marijuana. And he was saying that if it's smoked, it actually, if it's dried and smoked, it actually hurts the joints and causes arthritis. And you think that this drug is prescribed to people who suffer from arthritis. So I don't know what's the right way to use it, but you really got to know what you're doing. Same with herbalism. You do need to know what you're doing. And there are various effects. Same with astrological talismans. Okay, it's a trial and error, and you try to make it work with you. So we're going to have a lot of discussion about the medical field, drugs in particular. Okay, one of the things that I found myself reiterating is that when I was in academia, there were many, many forces trying to recruit me to be one of those public figures that break the stigma around the mental health, blah, blah, blah. And I was not satisfied with what I said. I'm willing to help people to to realize what their rights are and to actually implement their rights. But that I wasn't accepted for. And it told me I was ableist and people are not even in the place of implementing their rights. Let's say you have a right to study, okay? You say, oh, they're not even in this place. And now I question that, because at first I said, well, it may be I'm an ableist, so maybe it's, I have certain talents that some people deal with it in another way. But now when I combine the drugs or the beta blockers, the things that they take or they are forced to take that hurt cognition, I realized that had they not taken that and were acknowledged that they can have more rights, that they deserve rights, whether it's to study, whether it's residence, whether it's whatnot, even leisure time, subsidized belly dance class I took for 5 years. A lot of my imagery is around how the way things work in belly dance, when you isolate the components and then you bring them together, is from belly dance. And what I was told is like people are not even in this situation. I don't accept it now. And I see that what I wanted to do good, they didn't let me, but they wanted me to say, oh, look, here, I take this pill, I take that pill, look, you can take this pill too. That's not, that's not breaking myth around mental health. That's not advocating for tending to your well-being. But it's none of that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with taking a drug if you need it, when you need it, for as long as you need it. I was taking amphetamines that helped me to deal with my CPTSD. Okay, it was not why I was taking them for, but I noticed they were assisting for a while. They do draw on your magnesium levels, and they can cause you death also, not because of the magnesium, I think, but because they affect the heart rate. So yeah, it's not me advocating for pills, but it's just saying I'm not against doing something that helps you, but you need to be informed, and it is not something that can be or should be forced upon you. And it cannot be that we break the stigma around health only when taking pills. With COVID, we saw it exactly. It was like either you're vaccinated or you are, I don't know, the traitor to the nation. It's like either you're vaccinated or you probably don't believe that there is COVID. You can believe that there is COVID and believe in vaccines and question what is this thing that suddenly everybody says, oh, you can have this for free, come, and this will save your life, but you have to do it another month and another month and another month for like what, the rest of our lives. So there's something very awkward about it. You want to question it, you want to put space in between action and an initiation. So that's another thing that we're going to see people starting to question. Another thing that is to do with that, because of the desire to touch the eternal or to touch perfection, there can be also corruption of data. It's not from a mercurial place, it's from the casting of illusion that can be very intentional. Okay, so the healthcare system in Israel published, because there were many people who were hospitalized in mental hospitals and suffered violence, atrocities that I cannot even begin to, and this was not a unique problem for Israel. And they managed to sue, they managed to litigate, they managed to unionize. So the healthcare system published a fake research, a completely fake research that says 99 of the people who has been through hospitalization are satisfied with the treatment that they got there. It's like, whom are you kidding? Okay? But this is a part of the grandeur illusion that Neptune can bring about. Okay, Neptune retrograde, they try to tend to that by spreading fake information, by virally spreading fake information. Okay? Neptune is where you can't control things, and Neptune is also where some video can go viral. There's also a situation where there can be more viruses or learning about the pandemics and so on and so forth. So there can be more awareness, but it's not necessarily that you understand the underlying, issues around that. Okay. And you have to understand that every drug is also chemical castration. And just yesterday, I was running into the topic of eugenics again. And that was a video about Adolf Hitler. And I did Hitler and Stalin synastry because I'm fun like that. And I saw a video about Hitler being inspired by Churchill on the topic of eugenics. Okay? And I was just strolling in the kitchen. In the kitchen. Everything happens in the kitchen. I don't know why. I was cleaning. My kitchen is a mess. Oh, I wanted to talk about the tea. Anyway, I was strolling in the kitchen. And I was thinking, and there you are, meaning me, a secular Jew, third generation to the Holocaust, whose grandfather lost the entire family but his brother. There was like 16 of them. It's not as modern, I'm a single child. There were 16 of them. And he lost all of them by his brother, realizing that everybody was doing it, but Hitler got slacked for it. Okay, and I was having a moment with myself in the kitchen. Now let's talk about the tea. Speaking about spilling the tea. So I had to spill the tea yesterday. I tried to make me some tea, and I made some good batch, but I was trying to put it sun tea. Okay? I don't have the fine water that, I have like tap water that I boil. That's what I had. So I was putting it outside on a beautiful Jupiter altar for Jupiter Day with some nutmeg and, all that beautiful stuff. And I came back and then I put it in the fridge and I saw it begins to kind of simmer. And I put it in the fridge. I took it out of the fridge yesterday when Neptune went retrograde. Took a sip and I threw the whole bottle up because it started to rot. But the thing about it, I wanted to save my prickly lettuce, and I wrote like a fine note saying this is not weed, and I even made a bottle of tea, okay, with cane sugar, and I put it there so that if the employees come to, you know, to take them off, it was like have some tea. but of course, I was taking down this tea too, because that would rot, and they would have a non-fine tea that would cause more conflict than good, and I had to spill all the tea, and that's how the liquids that I made during a Jupiter day, okay, this associated with Pisces, I had to lose them. So Neptune, by the way, not only Saturn, this rules rotten things, or going over, or doing over something herbal, but also that notion of loss. Okay, think about you're sailing a ship, you're looking at the horizon, you say, I don't care, I'm gonna touch that horizon. You don't even have to be drunk, you just like, you look at it and you want to go there, and the closer you go, the more the horizon is going far away from you. So there is disillusionment and there is loss, there is a longing and a loss around these Neptune. It's like you touch the horizon, you have the experience, and Neptune comes from the experience of touching the horizon and feeling the eternal, and then wanting to come closer, and it's like, oh, but that was not it, but it felt like it, but that was it, but that was not it, and so on and so forth. So it can give you, you know, it's not the simple thing, you know, with Pluto, if you talk about relations, let's say it touches on your relation stuff. With Pluto, it can be like, oh, why am I attracted to people who don't want me, or to like a third wheel or something like that. With Neptune, you're not going to feel that. You're going to feel there is something here, okay? There's a spiritual union. And sometimes it's true, sometimes the other party doesn't feel, sometimes it's disillusion, yeah, many things. And you have to just accept it, that this is the reality, is that we don't know. Okay? But we also need to understand that Neptune sextiles Pluto, and we can't ignore that, which is also retrograde. So right now we don't get a pure Neptune. We get a Neptune that is imbued with Pluto. And so the sense of Neptune can be associated with people doing some power issues that you can either play power games that you're not conscious of, or you might idealize somebody who's playing power games, whether they are conscious of it or not. Okay? So it's a very confusing, you know, effect in general. And in the retrograde, things come up, something pops up. Oh, there was that happening. Oh, it was actually that happening. And some new information, and it can cause you a sense of, well, I was disillusioned about that. Oh, I was disillusioned about that. Okay. Or, oh my God, it's so great. They have, like, now they're going to have psychedelics. Suddenly they're doing something right. Well, people are not that informed in how to use it properly, and the damages that can happen will tag people as psychotic, where all they're having is a non-volitional, non-dual experience that can be dealt with variety of ways, other than given a certain chemical. There's both chemical castration and can kill them. Like beta blockers kill people. It basically keeps you keeps the involuntary muscles from contracting, and that is why and how you can't poop, you can't digest, you can't absorb minerals. You may have difficulties reaching an orgasm, which requires contractions. and your heart starts like contracting. This is also an involuntary muscle. So heart palpitations to that, and you won't have any signals that something is happening because the beta blocker shuts off the thing that's supposed to contract and say, hey, something bad is happening, something save my life. And it won't happen, you'll just die. So so that's a complication that can come from something that you can say, oh, well, that's good. Since finally people will be able to have psychedelics and won't have to, go through all kinds of ways to get it that are not good. But that way to get it is already problematic as well. Other things is atrocities that are done also by spies. Spies can be exposed. Missing people can be exposed. Data around missing people. People who try to go and locate missing people, okay, they can be like the star of the show, or somebody tries to finish them off. That can also happen. Or depending on the transit, we can lose such people. Neptune with with the Saturn in the same sense, it has to do also with refugees, with shipwreck, with missing people, all these things that we kind of go over and we think about it. Okay, like that notion that, hey, medicine in general is an attempt to touch the eternal. Okay, those are the kind of thoughts you would have when you are reflecting on the nature of something associated with a planet that is retrograde. So that's Neptune. Another thing we will have to look at is addictions. Like I said, most addictions are to subscribe my channel. Are to prescribe drugs. Okay, another thing that people don't know about people who have addictions, they think people who have addictions have problem with functioning. Okay, when I was in Netherlands, and I didn't know too much about people who have like addictions, to heroin or to this. I had no idea until somebody did coke in the bathroom when I was in the shelter. I had no idea. It was something I would see only in the movies. And so I saw this lady. She was a security person for the red light district, and she would prepare her clothing. First of all, everything was so orderly and so clean. She was very, very clean. It's very, very, very interesting because she was very, very clean, but she was addicted to drugs. She was very, very self-aware. She understood that. She said, I'm the type of person that I'm listening to everybody telling their shit to me, but nobody listens to me. And I saw what she went through trying to quit it, but also she was perfectly functioning. She had like militant discipline. Imagine like you've been working in the freezing cold all day because you had no place to stay and it was locked down, so you couldn't just stay at the cafe or something. And now it's afternoon, you're getting ready for the evening, okay, fixing up, tidying up her clothes, like straight, fixing everything, preparing the clothes for the next day. And that's not something that you would expect. The person said, oh, people who are addicted are probably, they can't care for themselves. Like, you hear all these stories. And it's not that all these stories are not true. It's just that the people are diverse. Okay? And the person can deal with tremendous addiction, but can be appearing functioning at 100%. And they take the drugs to escape those things that they cannot deal with, because when they try to receive help, they don't receive help to deal with these things. Again, that lady was denied in the shelter. She just wanted water with sugar because she tried to withdraw herself. And it was night and she was banging on the door. And she only told me about this the next day because I was so dissociated I was sleeping. And you need to be dissociated to be sleeping in those situations. But the thing is, she was denied this water with sugar. They didn't let her come down because they said the door must be locked. You must obey the rules. Okay, but there are people. The rules must have an exception. Otherwise, it is not a rule. It is something else. But try to tell that to touchies that are supposed to be in governing of the rules. So this is another thing when the stigma that we have around people who deal with addictions. We may become more self-aware. We may become more aware. Most of us are addicted to something, whether it's the phone or your cup of coffee. For some people, it's smokes or cigarettes, or it can be a certain habit that you're locked into. And now you have the time and the ability perhaps to go through it and to let go of it. It can be something stupid. Okay, you know the people that stick the ear, they try to clean the ear from within, and it's like, it feels so good. You're not supposed to do it. I actually went through not doing it. And you see that there are holistic things to do with that. Okay? It's like, oh my gosh, I did not imagine it would be this difficult not to poke at my nose holes. But don't get there are the people who put hoppy candles and this. It's like, that can get into your ear, and then you'll find yourself having to rely on the conventional medicine again. So yeah, those are the type of things that you can use. It can be something as simple. It's like you're poking a hole at your ears for no reason. Stop doing it. It cleans itself. Just put, a tissue around it. Most of us don't know it. I'm not saying that's the absolute truth. There are so many things there, but it can be that simple, and that's an addiction. Okay, you need to cut it. It's not good for your health. So it's not necessarily these hard cases of like heroin. And another thing I was thinking about, mostly when you take a look at the welfare. Now we're talking healthcare system, so welfare. Mostly a person is being a parent, especially parents suffer from this tremendously, but all people, they are being tested on how they can function. And I was joking about this a while ago, but I kind of thought about this again. Beyonce has her new tour and she's looking amazing, and and doing all this work. It's very hard. It's been very successful. You can't argue that Beyonce is not successful. But what she tells, and I watched some interviews with her, and what she tells, when she had interviews, she said she can't cook. Okay? She can't cook. And she says that she grew up with, and they were, before Beyonce was famous, okay, they were middle-class Texans, and she grew up with, I think it was 8 nannies. 4 or 8 nannies. So not one nanny, 8 nannies. So she grew up like this. It was natural for her that her children will grow up with nannies, because that's how she grew up, as a black middle class family. Before she was Beyonce, it was just black middle class in Texas, Houston, Texas. Okay, there's that. And I was thinking, if a social worker had to go to Beyonce's house and she didn't have all these nannies, and had to see, does she cook? Can she cook? Can she clean the house? Okay, clean it. She's a Virgo, but does she know? Does she feed her children? Does this? Does that? They would deem Beyonce not eligible to raise children, and they would take the children away. I kid you not. And you can't argue that Beyonce is, as far as we know, we never know anything about that. It's not like an incompetent parent, right? Or doesn't care for her children. You can't argue about that. And I was running actually into a post in one of the groups with someone who says that they can't bring themselves to cook. They can't bring themselves to clean. They can't bring themselves to say, okay, but you need to also do something that's meaningful for you. Say, I couldn't cook and I couldn't clean before I was doing aromatherapy blends. And I was like, oh, now I'm doing something creative that I enjoy. So I'm cleaning the tools for it. Now I'm having a cream, so I'm cleaning the tools for it. So now I'm going to cook me something with these herbs or do something like that. And then it got creative. Then I was able to do that. That's what I needed. So um, and what I had to tell this person is like, well, you gotta remember, you gotta do something meaningful to you, and who you are, your functioning is not something that can be tested on whether you cook or clean. Beyonce can do none of that. And that's something that we need to remember when we come to our healthcare system. This is a time that is crisis time. Many families are separated. And what happens with these families? Okay, Saturn, and this I think Rune Soup, but he said the Saturn's particular, it rules bonds. Okay, it rules bonds. Because what is bonds? It's the profit that we make off debt. Okay, you buy a bond and believing that somebody will be able to pay this debt, and the bank gives you all the reasoning to believe so, although it has no reasoning and credibility to give you that it's that way. And one of the things that I would tell people after the 2008 crisis, where he gave me, I think, an antidepressant, and then, I dealt with money in a certain way, and I told people like, I am your bonds. My credit score was impeccable because I was doing everything in cash on purpose. I didn't know anything about credit score. Say, I am your bonds. Look at what's happening in the healthcare system. People are being prescribed medications going to get them to get the zoomies. It's like prescribing a catnip for a cat and then complaining that the cat is having the zoomies. Here, you're going to get the zoomies. They're going to give you a diagnosis for the zoomies because you're not going to say, well, it's a side effect. You're going to say, well, you have another problem. Okay, now you get another medication. You have another problem. You get another medication. In the end, you're dead. But until you're dead, you're going to have, a lot of people made profits on you. Say, I am your bonds. People are not going to be able to pay that. And I know this because the judge that was helping me, eventually, like he was a good person, he said to me, you have no idea how many cases like yours I deal with every single day. The person was prescribed the medication, they got into debt. Now, like of course, they cannot pay this debt. And it was also already after I was, Me Too veteran, so I already knew that I was already beginning to understand that I may not be mentally ill as much as I have complex PTSD because I went through violence. So it's like, oh, okay. And so you see a lot of these bonds will be exposed. Maybe some people are going to pop up and say, now I am your bonds. Your tax money is being invested in these companies that oppress me from being able to make a life while making a living. So you can't have your bonds back. I have to rely on welfare. And we don't get anywhere. Okay. Another thing is that we can begin to understand where is our generational wealth coming from, what's it doing, and where our taxes come from, what they're doing. Yeah, I had the video where I said, I just, woke up and realized most of the people that receive welfare, people that were working, they were working and paying taxes. Now, when you invest the taxes, if you invest, if you take just, let's say a person pays $1,000. You take the $1,000, not much you can do with them, but you take that $1,000, that $1,000, that, and you invest it as a group. Okay, now you have $250 million, and you just get 5% interest on it. Now you made yourself, I don't know how to calculate that. Okay, but now you made yourself a significant amount of money. And when we receive help from our government, we're basically getting our taxes with the compound interest. Okay, nobody is giving you charity. Okay, it's supported in some way. That's the way it is supported. Now, what did they make this money from? I don't know. Okay. And so even when you are receiving welfare, first of all, you pay taxes, but then even when you are receiving, it's not the problem is not that you're living on taxpayers, but you're living on your own taxes. But the thing is how did they get the compound interest? What did they invest in? We don't know, because the companies that do that don't expose what they do. But if you want to buy, if you got 10 euros and you want to get yourself a latte in Amsterdam, then you need to go to have a credit card. You won't take your 10 euros because maybe you're money laundering, buying yourself a latte. Okay. That's okay. Those are the kind of things, instead of telling you what Neptune retrograde could be about, I'm giving you concrete cases. That's what it brings up. That's what it brings up. So things are going to come from the bottom of the ocean and they're going to reach the surface. And Neptune is, I believe, the slowest moving planet. Okay, it's not Pluto, it's Neptune, right? Okay, it's Neptune, it's the slowest moving planet. Okay? It means that it brings things from so long ago that touch the eternity within history insofar as what we can perceive, unless you're working with Sedna. And, you like, hey, I would love to interview you if you are. And this is a part of what is happening here. So missing insights, and those insights in this particular retrograde, because of the presence of Saturn retrograde, even though they don't conjunct, they're in the same sign, you're gonna have revelations both of the Saturn nature in Pisces retrograde and the Neptune. Okay? You can combine things together. I was thinking for a while now, I was thinking, what makes a trust reliable? Like, how come all these people who have so much money and are at least informed about a lot of that not being ethically sourced? It's not that money is evil or making money is evil. It's just that we are living in a certain system that is in a certain phase of the system where it needs rejuvenation, and we are exposed to a lot of the atrocities and evils we have in our current way of being. There's not something eternally wrong about making money. Just to be exact. So it's like money, it's way better to pay $100 than to be bought as a slave because you don't have money to pay, right? And money is not the evil of that. It's actually money reducing that when it's done right. But, you can't guarantee that it's always done right. And now we're at the time where we're seeing the things that are going very wrong. Okay. And so we're going to look at them at the Saturn nature. So we're going to look at our bonds. But I also thought, what makes a trust reliable? And when you see these things like the welfare and the psychiatrist and the psychologist and the social workers and the media and the politicians are all covering up for children who speak up against violence that they were going through, or child trafficking, you're like, okay, I can see a situation where a group of people doesn't want to have certain child exploitation being exposed, and they're agreeing to write it on their name in favor of taxation, that you got a lot of money and you're going to make decisions about that money. Now, you probably need to have also a part in this child trafficking community, so to speak, in order to be trusted. So what you're trusted is not the bonds, it's not your money, it's not contracts, but it's actually a secret that both of you or all of you have the interest for, you or all of your child exploitation to not be exposed. And it kind of like we get trust in humanity with the worst means possible. So instead of trust coming from a Kantian notion of, I won't hurt you because it's an irrational thing to do, and if I will hurt you, you will think it's right to hurt me, and I don't want you to think it's right to hurt me. I don't want you to desire to hurt me, and so I will not hurt you. I will do as much as I can for myself, actually without hurting you. Not only that, I will actually think of doing you good, because if I do myself good and I do you good, you see that it's a rational thing. If we all did ourselves good and did each other good, then it will be good. we'll have a lot less atrocities. It's kind of like a common sense that is very individual. And if you sit with yourself, you kind of think that, oh, it's a lot better to sit with myself and look at the tree and light a candle and smoke something and, you know, reach God than to hurt, you know, a transient being that won't, like, I could kill you, but you, like, I can torture you and kill you. I will still suffer after you're dead. Like, it's not going to be the end of all my troubles. So I much rather do something good for me and for the while that I spare your life from both torture and everything and all of the above, and also bless you. And then you will see it's very rational to do the same. So if you feel like killing me, then you will go and you smoke something and you relax and you watch nature. Now for that, we need to have land. We need to have a place that we can retreat to. We need to have stigma around us taking time for ourselves to be better people removed. Okay, so it's both a social construct, and that was how, you know, the Kantian way to create trust. But what it actually happens is you have a couple of people that are plenty of people with plenty of money, and the way to get into that wealth distribution type of system is for you to have a secret that you can keep. And if everybody has the same secret as child exploitation, nobody wants that out. And now you can trust each other with everything. That you have this camaraderie based on your being, you know, obnoxiously treating living being. And there are even children. It was actually an article from the Netherlands that was on Twitter. I had it on my previous phone. And it said that some children that are being born are not being registered. They're just being taken into this exploitative, you know, industries. And that's, if I think somebody said $20 billion only in the United States that this industry make of children. It's like, am I reading? It's like it's worse than a Dostoevsky book. Those things are gonna pop up out of the ocean, and people will be addressing them. Okay, so the combination of Saturn Neptune, it's not for nothing when I think about this. The Saturn Neptune is very much related to the chart of Russia or USSR, and I refer you to Dan Waite's work around this, because he was the one that I heard talking about this the most. So I'm pretty like he may have come up with that. I don't know. So that's where you want to get like the information. And when Saturn and Neptune conjunct, we basically, which will happen in 2026, if I'm not mistaken, we basically have a kind of realization and rechanging or rethinking of the structure, trying to really have like this eternal wealth for everybody. Okay. Last time it happened, we saw communism, okay, kind of spreading as a regime. I'm not talking about Karl Marx, I'm talking about communism. So dissolution of boundaries is Neptune's, and boundaries and structures is Saturn. So bonds, everybody has an accessibility. So what about the accessibility for you to invest? And some of it is a part of the structure. And you want to watch my video about fiscal astrology, where I was kind of ruminating about the whole topic. Because if you get your money, let's say instead of paying taxes to the government, you get your money and you invest it, you won't get to the investment brackets that yield the dividends, that yield your retirement. Okay, that's something that any organization is very kind of like, the power of unionizing is supposed to be good for you, but something I learned in import-export, if you're a small company, you want to work with a small delivery company, okay? Because they're going to tend to you. Your big company is just, they can afford to lose you easily, and your stuff will get lost there easily. Okay? And so the person in the union, It's like, on the one hand, sure, unionizing grants a certain standard for rights that we want to have. On the other hand, the power of the unions is not just against the people higher up the rank, but also the employee. It's like I'm paying such and such for the fee for the union. Are they gonna fight for me? You say, well, you're only one case. Maybe they'll fight for you. Maybe they'll be good. Maybe they won't. Okay, maybe they're like, we're waiting for like 100 cases. And if you think about class lawsuits, yes, a law, your lawsuit can also be Saturnian. It's not just Saturnian, but class lawsuits, it's the least benefic of the things that one could do, because in a class lawsuit, if you're a part of a class lawsuit, even if you are the initiator, you don't get as much money. You don't get as much compensation because it's all divided between the people, and it's not anywhere near enough. So people would get like, $70 from McDonald's over having to be sick for I don't know how many days because their food was not okay. And then on the other hand, if you're running a business, you want it to be accessible for you to run a business, because if it's not accessible, then you don't have an accessible income. Okay. And all the various things that are involved with this, so cash flow, fluidity, leverage, liquid assets. Liquid assets is going to be a big thing. And those type of asset investments, being aware of the cycles that are longer in time, that have to do with liquid assets or with liquid stuff. That can be the ocean, that can be the long-term impact of having wars and refugees, and so on and so forth. And that can be our healthcare systems as well. What is And we can be also rethinking standardization and rethinking a lot of the things that we conceived as what comprises the nature of the scientific research, or the scientific dogma, if you will, especially in relation to that which is mysterious and to that which is not easily observable. Okay? Like, it's important to take into account that there are things you can't observe, and that they do have a mechanism, and tend to that, because if you're just dogmatic materialist, you're not going to get anywhere, not with your healing, not with your well-being. But on the other hand, if you give too much weight, if somebody tells you, oh, you were, I don't know, almost kidnapped as a child by a doctor that was probably child trafficker, because in your past life you were so and so and so and so and so. It's like, if it helps you be a better person, go ahead. But if it just keeps you stuck, like for me, when I think about it, I think, what, this means that this doctor will be a child that is being, no, I don't desire that to happen. So there are many worldviews and many ways to pick and sort your spirituality. It's not a bad thing to do something that actually supports your well-being. It is your faith and belief support your well-being. The term religious trauma, then you know what I'm talking about, as certain people have literally religious trauma. Okay? People that were shamed for who they are, whether it's gender or sex or some other form of being. I know that I had a friend and colleague that she came from a religious family. It's not super orthodox, but the fact that she wore pants was considered bad. And a part of her teaching was, there is no such thing as good and bad, because that was very relevant for her. Again, to her credit, I said, when I was dealing with, they don't know what's energy, was my ex-psychologist, then she said, I actually received that you need something that is good, that is nourishing for you. Okay, so she could go beyond her paradigm of seeing the world and even her teaching and preaching, and adjust herself to the situation. But unfortunately, when it came to my feet, she was biased by what she was taught, and basically mistreated. Is a mistake that can happen to everyone. It's not bashing, it's something that's a part of the process of growth and learning, at any profession. So That's the stuff that keep coming up with the Neptune stuff. When you talk about standardizations of healthcare system, the medical field, the sciences, you must understand that any attempt to standardize here is problematic because we touch on what happens when you die. What's in the horizon? What is beyond longevity, beyond the mirror? Okay, it's the other polarity that is Virgo. And sometimes you just find that that miracle, that magic that they did was just a scientific phenomena that now we can have it, give it a name. And sometimes there's something beyond that does that mean it does not exist, you know? And when you try to standardize these things, what comes up, if you talk about the standardization of medicine or the medical field, a lot of people who are traditional practitioners and had the wrong skin color or the wrong race, they were screened out by a supposed scientific dogma that is very highly, like the prevalent research method is in medicine is still evidence-based medicine with the same ANOVA models. I know they are working for something that's more TCM inspired, machine learning. I know that. I'm not out ruling. Those were the things I was looking at, but I also don't want to to elude you and allure you to believe that this is the standard, because it's not. And evidence-based medicine, albeit the tempting and sexy name, is basically a correlative model of studies of the effect of a given one drug on a very homogeneous group of patients. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, it's not something that on the basis of which you could outrule anything. It doesn't even cross the Weber refutable, paradigm, which is very problematic, because when you talk about holistic things, it's more difficult to refute something. And when you add that which is beyond what we know that we know, then you are already dealing with belief and picking your beliefs correctly. There was a study in Harvard that had to do with placebo and looking at placebo as an actual medicine. Okay, to use placebo as an actual medicine. And then look at the patterns of different placebos on different patients, actually informing the patient that they're getting a placebo is more effective than giving them a sugar pill without their thinking that they're getting the real thing. Okay, I don't remember the name of the professor. I used it in my thesis proposal. That was back in, I think, I don't remember you. Like I was doing that stuff in 2015, 2016. Okay, so the thesis proposal was approved at about 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So we are now in 2023. Things have changed. So those type of inquiries are to do with the Neptune. Neptune can also be quite artistic. So we can have dystopian artworks that's also related to Saturn retrograde. Okay, Saturn can give us this, I'm creating, I'm doing, I'm creating every day or every other day, I'm returning or accepting the non-linear path of healing. It's like, even if you had a lapse of a couple of days, you're going to get back to it. You're going to need to rest properly. Then you're going to feel the need to create something again, and learn about those hidden ways of building up your schedule and the things that you can't predict and account for them as much as you can. So losses is also a part of Neptune theme with the retrograde. It's kind of like digging something up from the grave. And every time I say something like that, I know that this is something that's happening in the world very literally. So I'm going to wait for the news of that to pop up. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I wonder, should I do the 12 ascendants? Well, thank you for watching. And of course, you can subscribe to my videos. The more viewers I get and the more watch time I get, then I might be able to cross the threshold of making money off this platform. And that is desirable. I think it would be an ethical way to make a living. It won't require me to give readings when I'm not ready to. not in terms of professional, but in terms of the other professional, which is, having to keep the meeting a secret and so on and so forth. I'm a bit of a whistleblower. It's kind of contradicts what I do in life. So my books are not open currently, not because I wouldn't like to help you or assist you, but because I would need to keep our conversation a secret. And as you know, I'm not the best at keeping secrets at this moment in my life. So right now, the best thing is if I post this content and you like this and you enjoy watching, so hitting the subscribe, liking, and the watch time is basically how I can get if I get 1,000 subscribers, then I can begin to earn money from that. I don't know how much money. I heard it's not a lot, but that's one ethical source of income that I can produce, and by actually doing good for the world rather than hurting people. So that is the thing about the subscribe button. For the ascendants, the thing is with the outer planets, and you need to check my outer planets to inner planets video, the last one that I did. I don't remember what it's called, one of the last videos. But when an outer planet like Neptune makes an aspect to anything personal in your chart, you're going to be a part of the news. You're going to be involved in the event rather than reading the news. Okay? I think I call that video "Be in the News." So let's say this Neptune, you have Pisces, and you have Neptune going through Pisces, and Saturn retrograde, Neptune retrograde doesn't touch anything particular in your chart. Maybe if you are sensitive to the moon, when the moon will aspect it or conjunct it, you will feel something in the air. Probably, unless you're taking like moon, Neptune, talismanic stuff, you're probably not going to sense it all that much. And then you think, oh, the outer planets, they don't matter, they're generational. Then you get hit by a Pluto transit, that you don't know how to deal with because you never worked with Pluto. And it's kind of like the difference between taking a psychedelics by just trying something, and it could be great, and it could be something you will have a lot of years trying to process later, and doing the Terence McKenna of starting in the library and staying there for quite a while before that transit comes. And that's a part of what astrology does, is predictive. It's not that I can predict to you. There's some concrete event astrology that can tell you, like, you're going to have this disease in that age. It's not going to be terminal, but in that age, that's going to be terminal. So you can do that with astrology. If you do good rectification, you can do that with astrology. It's not something that I study how to do. And some people have the stories where they ran into their own, the age that they will die by chance. We recently had one like this. I don't know if I can talk about this with the name or not, because I don't know if they expose it privately or not. But those things happen. And we have the famous Austin story where he said he didn't take astrology for anything much, and he tried to predict the deaths of people, and then they started dying, and they died the way that he predicted it. So it's kind of like, oh shit. And that's the story that I like to tell when I address concrete event stuff. That's not what we do in general, because mostly you're not here to hear about that kind of stuff. When you need to be very stoic or to have a particular life philosophy to want to have this information for that to be beneficial to you. But what an astrologer can tell you, it's like, hey, you see this Neptune? It's right on your ascendant. You probably have been having a couple of interesting years, haven't you? Okay. Or you see this Neptune. What's it doing? It's not doing anything to personal planets now. You see this Neptune? Oh, it aspects your moon. But this is a hard aspect. Okay, here are the things that you can do. If you want to take on an artistic endeavor, it's going to help you express those things that don't really have wordings to them. Okay, maybe you want to do abstract art for a while. Maybe you're inclined to do that. Okay, or they're going to tell you, oh, this Neptune is in your 7th house. Maybe not aspecting anything, but this is in your 7th house. So maybe since 2000, not 2000, the 90s even, maybe since the 90s, you've been having patterns in your relations. I actually did a video that a while ago. I don't even remember which video it was. But this, if you have Neptune in your 7th house, transit in your 7th house, if you're Virgo ascendant or Libra ascendant, you're about to have that as of 2026. What can I tell you? Take everything your psychologist said with a grain of salt, because they can be the most talented psychologist. But if you would come to me and I would see you as, consulting your relations. Okay, not that I'm trained to do that, but let's say you came to me, then I ask you a lot of questions, then I try to see if there is a pattern in your life. You have this pattern. Or you try to save people, or you try to make people be saved by you, or you try to be the healer of your partner. Okay? And I tell to you, listen, you have this path in your life. Okay, then we try to work through this path. But if you have Neptune in the 7th house, it has an expiration date. It's like for the time, and this is a big concrete news, okay? Because until 2026, if you are Virgo ascendant, what can I tell you? Instead of going to the many therapists, okay? If there is any addiction, tend to treat an addiction, and so see what helps you with that. That will help you more to your relationships. Because in 2026, it will be off from your life. It will be in your 8th house. There will be other problems. But right now, for as long as this thing is in your 7th, there's something that it's doing that I can tell you maybe a speck of it. But I cannot tell the whole story because the story is not ended yet. Some of it is patterns that you have. Some of it is something that you won't be dealing with once it's out of your life. Some of it is pattern. Maybe you seem to attract partners that are addicts, that are this, that are so, that are that. It's like, what's wrong with me? Why am I bringing these partners? And you try to go for the magic solution. I'm going to implement that, and then it's going to be out of my life. I'm going to deal with my addiction to coffee, and then I'm going to have the perfect partner. You're going to deal with your addiction to coffee. You're going to be alone. And then it goes into your 8th house. Now you can have a chance. It clears out your 7th house. Oh, now you meet somebody stable. Okay? Now you meet somebody stable. They're very stable. They're not addicted to anything. They're not necessarily in debt. But you kind of like to gamble. Okay? And that, because the 8th house is this, it goes from one house to another. So wherever Neptune is at in your chart, it's stirring up something that puts you in a position where you don't know whether you should let go because it sextiles Pluto, or whether you should find your power within a certain addictive pattern. Okay? Your house is a mess, you can't get out of bed. Should you actually try and sleep even deeper? See what helps you sleep even deeper so that you can gain power to do even the tiniest thing in your house? Or should you force yourself a bit out of bed and then it gets easier? Okay. Sometimes if you try to do it and it gets harder rather than easier, then maybe you need to stop. Not stop doing it altogether, but rest even more so than you think you need rest, because you're processing something that's even more so for what you're thinking you're processing. Okay, with Neptune, Pluto, processing trauma of some sort, intergenerational even. So this is pretty much what I have to say about this particular transit. And it's a good time to, like, if it's a good time to reverse certain addictive patterns. It's a good time to save some money for the 6 months that it's there you might be able to be more frugal, or you might be able to pay yourself first, if you're able to do that. For some people, it may work differently. Or if you've been the other way around, maybe you will be enjoying life a bit more. But you have to make sure you don't overdo certain things. Patterns will become more obvious. Places where you have been eluding yourself will become more obvious. And so, unfortunately, that can entail disillusion. Okay, there are things that you are being disillusioned from. Particularly if you're trying to look for the magic pill. Okay? We all have a tendency to do that. Like, why are we learning magic, right? You try to look for the magic pill. And you're going to see that it helps you to do something to a certain degree, supports your energy. But there is no magic pill. Or you try to escape from some certain thing that you are dealing with, and it's not so escapable. But it can also mean that you have to find your power in a certain way here, because Neptune sextiles Pluto. So for example, do you know the sentence, the only way out is through? Okay. For some people and in some circumstances, this is absolutely valid. The only way out of the situation is to agree to feel, to agree to be in it, to agree to be present in it, and then, kind of like the Eckhart Tolle. Okay. But some cases, like when my psychologist was violent to me and I said, how do we grow with love? Okay, I want to solve this pattern. You're being violent to me. I'm gonna go. There's gonna be another patient. You're gonna be violent to them. I came here to, not to I was frustrated for my attempts to tend to the relational stuff. And he says the only way out is through. And then he began to psychically attack me and said, they don't know what's energy. So, whatever it was. So this was actually an abuse of a saying that is very valid, but it was given in a gaslighting context. And of course, he had to go through, like, if I'm going through this, you are going through this with me. So, of course, I exposed him, which exposed to me how far off people were around this topic. And how this topic is the system actually is. And eventually it would lead to me understanding that the whole experiments that I did with trying to take this medication and that medication, so that the doctor will be, will not be afraid. And I said, I'd rather have an afraid doctor and me feeling good than, a doctor that is sure that everything okay and everything is going fine, and me being in terror that I cannot even speak about and receive validation. Okay, so eventually the whole story in the bigger picture, it led to me not even tending to these drugs that they actually kill people. And then the more I'm far away from that, the more I understand how for me it was the right thing to do. But you're gonna get that. The losses that Neptune brings, they have a bigger picture, but you can be gaslighted around something. And then you just go away from that. When you finally go away from that, and then you find out more and more and more and more. Okay, kind of like when I was a Me Too veteran, I thought it was a sexual harassment. I think, for me, I thought the person was not even quite understanding what he thought. He was trying to get something with me, but it's like, darling, I cannot say no. If I cannot say no to you without nothing from me being hurt or being threatened, I cannot even begin to think about you as a person, or to think about the yes, if I cannot say no. Okay, I was seeing it so very naively, and eventually, 2 years after that, I read what his friend was accused about and began to realize that that was part of a human trafficking chain. And when you said no, then they would harass you. And I was like, oh my God, he was doing that? Like, this is so crazy. Okay? And those are a part of the things that Neptune does. So you can be addicted to something only when you stop do you realize what was hiding underneath it. And that can be something as, when the time where my phone was not okay, I had to deal with the emotions that come in me. Usually I grab the phone, either I watch YouTube videos or I grab the phone and I record something. Okay? And I have to deal with what's happening with that void. Neptune is the void. It gaps a void where my phone is like, at least tend to that. At least know that there are certain things that come up. I'm like, oh no, I need my phone. I need something to distract me from that. Okay? And it's not heroin, but it's absolutely a certain addictive pattern where Neptune opens a gap and it lets you in on its secret. There's some things that you can deal with now, some things you might deal with later. But if it's transit in a certain house, it's transit in a certain house, and you need to be able to accept that this is not the whole story. Okay, and I can tell even about medicine. I want to tell you this story that I kept telling around my thesis, working on my thesis. I was actually teaching German privately, and one of my clients was a doctor. And she, and I don't remember, I talked about my thesis, and she said, I know my colleague had a research in cancer. They had a drug, okay, that got people that were terminally ill on remission. Again, remission is basically when you start getting better. Okay, the tumor gets smaller. And that was a miracle. And then suddenly, all the budget stopped, the research stopped, and of course, the patients died. Okay, so here when I tell you, oh, these beta blockers, this, that, yeah, these beta blockers are terrible. Does it mean that there is no magic pill? You know what I mean? That there can be actually things that not all people can go through this shamanic journey. And for me, at the time where I was saying the no to the beta blockers and all that, and even all the mild mood stabilizers and all that jazz, and I'm like, no, I'm tending to my life circumstances. That was, I was channeling for 6 months straight, whole, not half channeling, whole, everywhere unmoved, everything I touched, everything I did, everything I said, everything I didn't say. It was tremendous. It was 6 months. Okay? That's the equivalent of being a monk for 6 months. Not everybody can do that. Okay? They can be. Some things that aid you. If you think about the pregnancy where they get this shot, that epidural, okay? You get this shot, and that helps women deliver their baby naturally without being exposed to that. It can also make it more difficult to give birth because you need the contraction, okay? And epidural, it shuts you down, so you're not in connection with your muscles so much. But all in all, a lot of women do prefer that, and while it can cause complications and all kind of that, it's not something I would say, oh, it's so good that we no longer have the ability for that to be so accessible. It's not that kind of drug. And this is also something to think about with Neptune. Because there are drugs that are actually effective. There are quasi-magic pills that are actually effective. But research budgets are being cut off. And that's not accessible to people. Okay, and I had a couple of calling for researchers who had such thing where they found out something, it was working, and then suddenly they did not get any more budget to continue on with it, even though it's helpful. I assume that a part of the reason that people did not apply to that is the fear to speak up. And for me, when I said it, I just have to assume that they're being silenced. Okay. Of course, there is also the patents issue that can go out of hand because we want people to be accredited for their creative endeavors. That being said, we want things to be accessible. So yeah, those are all things Neptune. So it's both about looking at drugs and kind of like, oh, I was just looking for the magic pill. Oh, psychedelics can actually cause you all that much turmoil. I didn't know that. And it's going to be marketed as a magic pill. That's the cautionary tale. Okay. And on the other hand, there can be things that are very good for you, and that either it's like psychedelics, you need to know when to use it, how to use it, and if you are the person to use it, or you maybe want to work energetically with the herbs rather than to consume them, or even things like simple like marijuana. Okay, and I'm thanking Cameron for that. It's like if you smoke it out dry, it can cause arthritis. It causes problems and inflammation, so you have to know how to consume it. So it's like it's not, you find out what is not a magic pill and what you thought was like magical herb. On the other hand, there can be a lot of things that are indeed way more productive than what we have in the market, but budgets are being stopped even from life-saving cures, even if they are conventional medicine. Okay, it doesn't have to be, oh, they don't know that this herb stops cancer or that this herb stops this, and if they knew, they would patent it and you could no longer grow it and you could no longer harvest it. And this is very, very regulated. This happened with marijuana. But it can also be conventional medicine. There's some drug that actually works, but it doesn't go to the market. And so we get a funny situation, kind of like with the Me Too, that people accuse people of false accusations. And it's kind of like, well, the people who are the Amber Hearts, they get all the attention, while the people who actually go through this, they won't even file for a loss. Like, they won't even file for that. We also don't want to get to that, because you're going to have a lot of sugar-free lemonades. You're going to have a lot of people saying, well, there is no way I can trust anybody. And that can bring intensely destructive results. I believe in many ways that the person who was offended towards me, he would probably give up half his property if he had any, for me to just shut up about it, which would not be because I didn't speak up for money. I spoke up because I needed to heal. Okay, I needed to heal, and I wanted to change, and I wanted to change things so that I can be healthy. Like, you could give me so much money, but I won't be able to speak. I won't be able to heal. So we didn't do anything. It's not for or against him. It was for me. But I believe he would be like preferring to give me, I don't know how much money, just to not to have to go through this situation where things were done in that way. Okay? But this is also, where you can't trust any of those systems. What you get into a situation is that the drugs that are helpful to people are not accessible to people. What's accessible to people is accessible in a way that it's useless or will cause destruction. Okay, there's also a fiscal problem. To make something profitable, it's got to be a mass commercial. You have to have, to be able to earn from small marginal profit, is to make a product accessible for the masses. You have to have it mass production, and not only mass production, mass sales, so that you get a dignified income from this very low marginal profit. Okay, and that's a general structural problem that we need to allocate resources to treat those type of diseases that are rare, because otherwise you have to make it in so that it is not a rare disease and everybody has it. And whenever you have a new drug in the market, everybody has it. So it was CPTSD, but how can we say post-trauma when people are still not changed, where the system is still not changed, where reality is still not changed? When not post-trauma, you're still dealing with that. And that's what makes people, and people look for the magic drug. But the magic drug is that we bit by bit change the reality as much as we can. That's the magic drug. And we may have sedatives along the way, or amphetamines, or something that wakes you up, actually. It does the opposite. And that is true also to holistic drugging, also when you prescribe an oil or a herb. So it also works in this way where it helps you instigate, it wakes you up to a change that is needed in your life. You might actually, run into circumstances that are even more challenging seemingly, because you're detoxing something. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next episode. Yeah. Bye-bye.